Hi guys, welcome to episode 2 of the big fights that I've attended over the years. And if you haven't seen episode 1, this is a little mini series I've put together about all the big fights I've been to in Las Vegas or wherever it might be. I'm starting with the American ones. I have been to a lot of Australian ones. I might do those at a later date, but I'm starting with this one. In this episode, we've got the Floyd Mayweather Miguel Cotto fight from 2012. We've also got the Manny Pacquiao Tim Bradley first fight that took place also in 2012. But the other fight I'm going to do, I'm actually going to rewind just a little bit. You'll recall the last fight of the first episode was, I think it was Pacquiao and Mosley, which took place, I think, in May 2011. We're going to rewind back to, I think it was about January or February of the same year, of 2011. I forgot to actually put this one in there. It wasn't actually a fight I went to specifically to watch. I was just over in the States and saw that this fight was on. And the reason I put it in is because it's a little bit significant in that it was Canelo's first ever world title fight. And it was against Matthew Hatton, Ricky Hatton's brother. And it was at the Honda Center, I think it's called, in Anaheim. Just happened to see it in the newspaper while I was there and thought, well, while we're here, let's go. So I looked it up on the internet. Now, strangely enough, the tickets were only, I think, about $300 American for ringside. Now, if you've ever been to a big fight or even looked them up online, you'll know that if you go to Vegas for $300, you're sitting right up the back in the bleachers in the nosebleed section. In this instance here, for $300, we were literally ringside. I was ringside, the first seat on the first row, and what was better about it, I was like right in Matthew Hatton's corner. Could have been better, I would have been in Canelo's corner, of course, but in this instance I was in Matthew Hatton's corner, right there. Now, one thing I can remember distinctly about this, first of all, I must admit I wondered who the hell Matthew Hatton was. I'd never heard of him. Obviously I heard of Ricky Hatton. Wasn't really aware of his brother Matthew and his exploits. Obviously he done pretty well because he was obviously in a world title fight here with Canelo. But the big thing I remember is sitting down. I remember seeing Matthew Hatton's family come in, including Ricky. They sat just around from us. I think they were literally the only Brits he had in the venue, which is quite unusual because you'll recall in the last video I did with the Pacquiao-Ricky Hatton fight, the place, the Las Vegas, was absolutely packed with Brits. This is a little bit different, of course. Matthew Hatton obviously had nowhere near the appeal of his brother, but I remember them walking in. Some boos rung around the stadium because I obviously saw them sitting down. Everyone loved Ricky, of course. He always gets the pats on the back. But the little entourage I had there, they sat in the corner, as I said, just around the other side of the ring from us. But literally sitting there, I could hear everything they were saying in the corner as during the round as they were yelling out. But the one thing I distinctly remember is that I think there's 11,000 people in the stadium that night. I think 10,990 of them were Mexicans. The roar and the cheers and the noise that the Mexican fans were making was just unbelievable. And this is a stage where I think Canelo would have been early 20s, maybe 21, 22. And as I said earlier, this was his first world title fight. So it was a big occasion. You can see there pretty much doing what he wants to. You can obviously see that Matthew Hatton, by this stage in round 7, is getting absolutely pummeled. So he's doing whatever he could to get arrested, maybe get a disqualification. I don't know. But I really felt for Matthew Hatton that night, and he did such an awesome job to hang in there. He was so probably outmatched, outclassed, overwhelmed by Canelo. You can see there the volume of punches that he's thrown. This is when he's obviously at light middleweight, so he was a different fighter to what he is at super middleweight / light heavyweight. But Matthew Hatton did a really, really good job of hanging in there. Look, he landed a few punches and did his best, but there's no way in hell that Canelo was going to lose that fight. And this is at the stage too where Canelo was bowling everyone over, and as I said, Matthew Hatton did a hell of a job just to hang in there. So it was a unanimous decision to Canelo. But as I said, I really enjoyed the whole getting so close to the action for $300. That was when the Australian dollar was actually doing okay, not like these days where it's probably equivalent to about 500 Australian dollars. So, but yeah, really, really good night. Canelo certainly deserved his win, and as I said, he got it by unanimous decision. For the WBC super welterweight title. And of course, after this, he just went on to bigger and bigger, better things, which obviously continues to this day. So, as I said, I don't envy Matthew Hatton being in there with all the Mexican people. In the arena, but it was just a really good atmosphere. I remember on the night too, on the undercard, Adrian Broner fought Daniel Ponce de Leon, and that was a really good fight. It's probably the first time I'd seen Adrian Broner. Definitely, obviously, the first time I'd seen him up close. But I remember thinking this kid's going to be pretty good, because I reckon at the time he might have only been 20, 21 or something like that as well. So really good night of boxing for a really affordable price. And it was obviously a Golden Boy promotion. So as I said earlier, at the Honda Center in Anaheim in California. So a ripper night there. You can see that's round 10. Canelo, went on to get the job done there. So that's Canelo versus Matthew Hatton. Apart from that, as I said earlier, I didn't go there specifically for the fight, so there's not a lot of tales to tell about the whole fight experience and everything else. It was purely just the day before we saw it. We went there, lucky enough to get down the front, and had a ripper. I went with two friends who were over there with me, and it was a really good experience. And sometimes it's great to get to those top fights that aren't those massive big fights in Vegas, to experience, not so much the club level type fights, because obviously it's not a club fight, there's 11,000 people there, but the ones that are slightly off Broadway just a little bit, where they are affordable to get to and down the front. And I've got a few other fights that I'll go over as we keep going through the different fights that I've been to. So that was in 2011. We've been through obviously the Pacquiao Mosley fight, which followed this one. It took me until May 2012 to get back over to the States to see a big fight, and it was this fight, Floyd Money Mayweather against Miguel Cotto. Just a ripper fight this was. I remember what really struck me as strange before the fight is that the MGM on the night of the fight got the tickets. I mentioned before, $300 got me ringside for $300. I don't think I even would have got in the venue for this card. I'd probably about 3 times as much to that to get anywhere near a half decent seat. So it really struck me funny that before the fights, when the prelims just started, so probably about I'm probably thinking 6 o'clock is when I first got there, Miguel Cotto was actually sitting ringside to watch the prelim fights. Now, I have mentioned this in a past episode of Classic Fights when we covered this particular one here, but I found it odd and really, really strange that Miguel Cotto, maybe it's part of his pre-fight ritual or whatever he does, but he actually sat down ringside. They announced him on the loudspeaker when the fights first started. Of course, everyone gave him a big roar, and I just found it strange that he would do that, considering lots of people around obviously wanting autographs and photos and all that. So that was a bit unusual for me, but I remember the build up to it. There was we went to the fights the night before this. They normally what they used to do anyway at the Hard Rock when it was the Hard Rock. I think it's the Virgin Hotel now in Las Vegas. They have the Friday night fights, so they have a small show that's promoted there. They might only get maybe 1,000 people there, but what's great about it is obviously you get all the fight fans that are there. The teams of both fighters were there the night before, so I actually had a bit of a chat, as well as he could speak English, that is one of Cotto's best mates. He's the biggest sort of guy you might see with him occasionally. So he was there, got a photo, and had a bit of a chat to him and a few other team members there and friends and family and that sort of stuff. So it was great. Oscar De La Hoya was there. I remember him being close enough, I could have probably put my arm around him, but obviously just getting inundated for photos and all that sort of stuff. So I sort of kept my distance. But yeah, the Friday night fights beforehand were just great. I can't remember who actually fought on the card, but it's really a good prelude to the big fight, obviously, the day after. And as I said, they get all the fight fans there, but also the teams and friends, family, and whoever else is there. So that was pretty cool. The Mayweather team were there as well. A little bit harder to approach the Money team. If you've ever been there and seen them, you know what I'm talking about. They have the flash tracksuits on, and probably think they're a little bit too good for the common supporter out there. But they were there. So look, it was a really good fight night, and of course onto this one. And look, I remember it being a really, really good, tough fight. Miguel Cotto is a quality fighter. I must admit, I expected Mayweather to get the job done pretty comfortably in this fight, but Cotto really surprised me. I thought he fought really, really well. Some people maybe thought he got the decision. I don't think by any means he got the decision, but he definitely bloodied Mayweather up in this fight and gave him certainly something to think about I remember too also in the lead up to this fight, in the week of the fight, how bigger it seemed to the other fights that I'd been to, the 2 or 3 I'd been to previously in Vegas. Seemed to be a lot more people around. Obviously, this was probably a bigger fight, maybe debatable whether it's bigger than Mosley and Mayweather, or Pacquiao Mosley, or Hatton Pacquiao. But I just remember just the feeling that it was probably a bigger fight than all those. Seemed to be a lot more people around, especially milling in the MGM foyer, as I mentioned in the previous video. So look, just a really great atmosphere as usual. The weigh-in was awesome. Cotto had a lot of support. Mayweather, of course, has always got plenty of support, but I do remember the roar that Cotto got. And as I said, it was a great fight, a really, really good fight. And Cotto really, I mean, I think the year or 2 years, might have been 3 years before this, or 2.5, he'd been stopped by Manny Pacquiao. So I thought it was a really good way to respond. And he didn't get the win, but full respect to Cotto for what he done. And Mayweather, well, he's just Floyd Mayweather. He's probably in the top 5 pound for pound fighters of all time for a reason. So so that was it. That was in May 2012. So let's get on to, just go back there. So let's on to the third fight in this this trilogy of videos that we've got here. It was a very, very controversial fight. It was Manny Pacquiao against Timothy Bradley, the first fight. Now, I must admit, I was a little bit tentative about actually going to this fight. I thought, well, I was only, I think 6 weeks or something after the Mayweather-Cotto fight. So as you can imagine, I've got a very, very understanding wife and trusting wife. She said, just go. I really wanted to see Manny again. And I wasn't overly fussed about Timothy Bradley as an opponent, I must say. I thought that Pacquiao would get the job done, no problems whatsoever. I knew Timothy Bradley was a good fighter coming up from light welterweight, but I wasn't really positive that he might give Manny a good fight. But as history will show, he got the win. I don't know how. I must admit, watching the fight, I think everyone around me were in the same opinion that Bradley was doing okay, but Manny was winning the rounds. And obviously after this fight, it came out that Timothy Bradley had the blisters on the feet and all the rest of it. I think he might have had a hurt hand or something as well. But look, he fought really well. I think everyone was surprised, but at no stage did I hear anyone in the crowd say that they thought Timothy Bradley was actually winning, which was a real surprise. And as I said, history shows that he got the split decision win. I don't know how. And I think in the 2 fights after this, Manny probably showed that there was a class between the two. Strangely, no, actually, I think the other thing that was wrong with Timothy Bradley was his knee. I think from memory, he'd damaged his knee. But you can see here, Manny getting the best of the exchanges, landing some big shots. And as I said, on the night in the venue, the crowd just went crazy once Manny was beaten. And one thing I must admit that surprised me, the Manny, for such a beloved fighter and a fan favourite and maybe a judge's favourite, who knows? He lost a lot of controversial decisions over the journey, which is really quite surprising. Obviously, we know about the Jeff Horn one, but there was this one. It's a really interesting one. But again, the week of the fight was great. Going to these big fights where there's a Mayweather or Pacquiao or a Canelo involved, it's unbelievable to be part of. People everywhere. Wasn't as big as the Mayweather-Cotto fight, I will say. I think probably a lot of people thought along the same direction as me that, it was great that Pacquiao was back, but Timothy Bradley wasn't really going to pose a lot of problems. I will tell you one quick story before we finish this episode, is that this was June 2012, as I said. Now, this is around the same time that the International Boxing Hall of Fame had their weekend induction. It was the same weekend as this. Now, I was at the LA airport actually going home after this fight, and I was at Burger King or Hungry Jack's, whatever you want to call it, in the States at the LA airport. And standing in line, about 3 people in front of me, was none other than Thomas Hitman Hearns. Now, he was getting inducted in Canastota, New York for the weekend for the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure whether he was on his way home or going somewhere else. Strange that it was in Canastota. This was in LA, so I'm not quite sure where he was off to. But I just discreetly sort of moved up and tapped him on the shoulder. And I still remember it. I said to him, "Oh, Thomas, Lynden Hosking, mate, really glad to meet you. I don't really want to cause any attention to you, but it'd be great to get a photo." And he turned around to me. Look, I will admit he was not impressed. The poor guy standing in line at Burger King trying to get a burger, and there I am harassing him, or trying not to, but obviously you can't help but harass someone when you interrupt them while they're in line for the food. He said, "Well, what do you think you're doing now? Drawing attention to me and whatever." Look, he was nice enough. He took the photo, but you could tell he wasn't overly impressed. But I've got to say, at that stage, I didn't care whether he was uncomfortable or not. It was the hitman, and I was getting a photo with him, right or wrong. So that's the story of that one. So a bit of brush with fame at the LA airport. I've actually crossed paths with a couple of fighters there. I remember actually being on the same plane as Anthony Mundine when he was at his, I won't say at his peak, but still fighting big fights. And I remember chatting to him at the LA airport. Really, really nice guy. And as I said, I was on the same flight home with him back to Australia. So that was pretty good. So that was the story of Pacquiao Bradley. No real stories to tell outside the fight itself. Just the standard sort of week with the arrivals and everything else. But as I said, it wasn't as big as the other fights, just because I think it was so soon after the Mayweather Cotto fight as well. Obviously with all the fame stuff going on. It was just a little bit going on at the time, and I'm not quite sure why Manny decided to fight him in June. It seems to be a bit of an odd month. Those types of guys normally tend to fight on the big weekends. Maybe because obviously Floyd fought the month before and took the Cinco de Mayo weekend. Maybe that's why he did. But look, it was a good fight. Again, I don't think Timothy Bradley won the fight. I thought Manny won quite clearly, and he showed that in the next two fights. What a great fighter he was, and he had Bradley's measure. But anyway, that was it. That was this episode 2 of this series. The next episode will be Manny Pacquiao again, this time against Juan Manuel Marquez, number 4. And we all know what happened there. I don't really need to probably mention what happened in that fight, but that will be the next one. And then in 2013, 2 big fights. Well, one big fight, one sort of big fight. It was Floyd Mayweather featuring in both fights. It was him against Robert Guerrero at the MGM Grand, and also a massive fight which was Floyd Mayweather and Canelo Alvarez again at the MGM Grand. So stay tuned for that one. Really appreciate all the feedback we're getting with the videos. I hope you're enjoying what I've got to say here. If you want to know any other information, feel free to hit me up. But until episode 3, we'll see you then.